The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.
With so many people living longer, the fear of outliving your money becomes a reality for many of us. Will I be a financial burden? Will I outlive my money? How will I be remembered? My name is Neil Himmelstein, president of Main Street Planning Group. Please contact me by visiting mainstreetplanninggroup.com. That's mainstreetplanninggroup.com, or call 631-647-4694. I will introduce you to strategies that will guarantee you will not outlive your money, that can guarantee you will not be a burden on your loved ones. Through a collaborative approach, we will uncover solutions that offer tax-efficient strategies, lifetime income, and legacy planning, choice, organization, direction, and education. That is the code we stand behind. Contact mainstreetplanninggroup.com, that's mainstreetplanninggroup.com, or call 631-647-4694. And listen to me every Friday at 3 p.m. as I host the Main Street Code for Financial Success, right here on 103.9 LI News Radio. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. I'm your host, Neil Himmelstein. I can be reached at 631-647-4694 or visit me on my website, mainstreetplanninggroup.com. We help hundreds of advisors across the country in helping them with their insurance questions and needs, as well as attorneys, CPAs, and clients that need us. Some of the things we talked about in past shows are guaranteed income for life. We have products that can give you a guaranteed income for life. Do you know how big that is? You know, you could have as much money or as little money as you want, but to pay the bills and to have income is key. And one of the things that people don't realize is in their life insurance contracts, if you have life insurance, you can designate to your family members or your children, instead of giving them a huge sum of money, you can actually put in the clause that I want to pay them an income for a certain number of years or when I want to pay them. That contract is huge. It's bigger than your will in the sense that the death benefit in that policy, you can now from the grave give provisions on when and where money gets paid. It's an amazing thing. And as a matter of fact, when we look at clients, and we've been in this business for a long time, we realize that sometimes as we get older or when things happen in life, it could be the largest asset that people have is that insurance policy. And it's amazing that people buy life insurance and they put it in their drawer and they forget about it. And they think, oh, I'm covered, and that's it. And that's not it. And today I want to talk about a client I helped this week that I've been helping for a while. And she had a whole life contract that she's been paying for 20 years. She is recently divorced, has 5 contracts on her ex-husband, all whole life contracts, and she has a whole life contract. So in digging deeper into looking at her whole life contract, which she's been paying quite a bit of money for 20 years, she says, I never even look at it. And it's built up a lot of cash value, but she thought she had $1 million whole life policy. What she really had was a whole life policy with a term insurance blend in it. So when we got down and examined the internal workings of that policy, we realized that in 5 years, if the dividends didn't pay what they were paying, which they're not, by the way, that her insurance policy would only be worth $377,000. But she thought she was paying $17,000 a year for $1 million death benefit. But you know what? She hasn't been keeping her eye on the ball, and I can't blame her completely because it's very common that people don't see these things in their contract. She would have only left possibly $377,000 because many of these contracts have riders and things built in. It's part whole life and part term. And why was it sold that way, or why was it presented that way? Probably to minimize the cost of insurance to the client. But without the client reviewing And without the client sitting with an agent and going over this, she would not know that. So what we did was we took the money from that contract and we put it in a less expensive contract, which bought her $1 million of life that's going to last for the rest of her life. And it has a rider in it, the policy, that will pay for long-term care insurance if she needs it. So if she needs some sort of long-term care, and we talked about that quite often, and she's now in her 60s and divorced, and that's her biggest concern, if she needs that long-term care, if she needs, and let's face it, 70% of us, after we reach the age of 65, 70% are going to need some sort of assistance with some activities of our daily living, or which a long-term care policy can pay for. So this particular policy, the new policy, will pay, if she needs it, for long-term care up to $1 million of long-term care coverage. And if she doesn't, that money will be left behind to her children. So we really did, was a win-win. And by the way, we're saving her $1,000 a month for the rest of her life. So she's getting more insurance, better insurance, and the fact that the best insurance is one that will pay when you need it, either for your long-term care or at your demise. And what could be better? And that's how we solved her solution. Now, her husband's 5 policies kept me up in the middle of the night last night because I was looking at them, and he's fully disabled. And what we didn't look at, or what I didn't see in their in-force, he's now 70, is I know in her policy she had something called a waiver of disability. What does that mean? So you could purchase a rider in an insurance policy, and a lot of whole life's policies still have this option. And it's if you become disabled, the insurance company will pay your premiums for you. So if you're in a high cash value policy and the insurance company is going to pay for it, and if you're disabled for the rest of your life, what a huge asset you have that somebody's going to keep putting the money for you and you never have to pay again. And his policies have loans on it. They're not pay. There's a lot of cash in them. They're not paying anything into them, so the death benefit is going down every year. But at the end of the day, if those disability waivers were in those policies, and they may be, we have to do some more research. Quite frankly, they may not even have to pay them, and maybe they can get that full death benefit of all those policies. Which reminds me of some other situations that I've helped clients with in the past. One client called me about 5 years ago, and he says, I've been paying for this insurance for 15 years, and I got a notice that he was 65, that my disability waiver is going to expire. He goes, I've been disabled for 10 years. What does this mean? So what it means is that I got him all the premiums back from 10 years that he's paid in and proved that he's been disabled, that he didn't have to pay, and he never had to pay another dime into his insurance policy. So we got him a check for like $25,000 on a $100,000 policy in his hands while he was living. And wouldn't you know it, 6 months later, he passed away and did not have to pay another dime into his policy, and his son got a $100,000 check in addition. That's a home run. But you know what? It all comes down to looking at the policies, seeing what's in them, and seeing what's not. Now, you get a lot of TV ads about policies, cheap term this, or I can insure this, and they're all over the place, and on the internet they buy insurance. Very rarely, I haven't heard ever in one of these policies, or when somebody's on the phone, does somebody talk about buying a disability waiver on their policy. That's a difference maker. If you become disabled and the policy is paid for. They don't talk about long-term care. They don't talk about anything else. So it's like buying something on the internet. You don't know what it is. Okay, it's a cheap price and I bought it. but you don't know what it is. And there are mysterious things inside contracts that you need to know about. We talk about conversions, and I've talked about this a long time ago, but I talk about this every week because it's so important. Early, when we get back from break, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. This is the Main Street Code for Financial Success. You're listening to Neil Himmelstein. I can be reached at 631-647-4694, mainstreetplanninggroup.com. Thank you. Welcome back. You're listening to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. Earlier, this is Neil Himmelstein. I can be reached at 631-647-4694. We talk about the code: choice, organization, direction, and education. And before the break, we were talking about policies with disability waivers in them and how I recovered money for clients who became disabled who had a disability waiver inside their policy. Also, when we're listening to the radio or the TV, we're getting inundated with companies trying to sell us directly life insurance. Let me tell you two things about all these companies and all these ads about, I can get you 30-year-old at $10 a month. Almost 100% of these companies are selling you inexpensive term insurance. Now, we can get you inexpensive term insurance from 30 different companies, just like any of those ads can. It's all the same price. It's all regulated. The price is regulated. Okay, so just get that out of your head. But the cheapest isn't always the best. They never talk about what happens if you become disabled. What happens if you need long-term care? What happens if you need to convert the policy into something permanent? And we can talk instance after instance of clients we've helped where they can't convert, can convert, do have disability, and don't. One of the clients that I helped about 5 years ago had an insurance policy. He had it for 15 years, and he had a disability waiver that was expiring. And he goes, "What is this? Nobody told me I had this thing. I've been disabled for 10 years. We were able to collect 10 years of his premiums that he had paid into his policy, gave him a check for $25,000. In addition, he never had to pay another dime into his insurance policy. He died 6 months later and left $100,000 to his heirs without having to pay a dime into it. He got more out of his policy than he ever paid into it, and his family benefited from that. We had another policy that occurred a couple years ago that an agent brought me, and he called me up in distress because his client was 56, 57 years old. He sold him a term policy when he was 50, and the guy was in great health. He was in what they call preferred health, and it was a $3 or $4 million policy. And he was in great distress because, you know what? He always, this guy, talks about buying it with a disability waiver. And this guy had stage 4 cancer. He actually had 2 cancers in the last couple years. His kids, he no longer can work, and he didn't have a disability waiver on it, and he was very upset by that. And his kids were about ready to start college, which is why he bought the insurance, to protect his wife. He still had a mortgage, 2 children, still wanted to protect his family, but no longer can afford the premiums, but had, this is like his last asset. Well, one of the things we did for him, which was huge in his life, we were able actually to sell his policy based on the death benefit that he purchased. So we were able to get him $1 million in cash with a remaining death benefit. His kids could now go to college, did not have to sell his house, for a term policy, he only paid in about $2,000 or $3,000 on, okay, a year, because it was very inexpensive. He was in great health, but now he was in dire needs. But he had this contract called life insurance, and even though it was a term policy, and very rare that you can get that kind of money for a young person on settling a policy. You may hear TV ads. There's a company out there saying, "Oh, don't get rid of your policy. Contact us first if you're over age 60, and the more impaired health, the better." Why? Because you have people betting that you're not going to live, so they're willing to pay a price for that and wait for the death benefit, and they'll pay the premiums. That's called settling a policy, or called a life settlement. And they can be used in many situations. If you've been paying for a policy for 25, 30 years, you can no longer afford it, but it's a good-sized policy and you're in poor health, you may be able to get money for it. Don't let it lapse. A lot of people say, well, I'm just not going to, what's the first thing they drop? Well, they look at it as an expense, not as a benefit to their family. This is a huge benefit, insurance. So we use life settlements in some cases for that, and it has saved clients tremendously. Last thing I want to talk to you about is very specific. Okay, if you have bought term insurance in the last 5 or 10 years from MetLife, from ING, from Mutual of Omaha, from, there's North American, you have to have it looked at today, and I'll tell you why. Many of these companies don't have policies you can convert to that you thought you can convert to for the future. And you need that availability, because what if you become sick and you need that insurance to last a lot longer than the 10 or 20-year term, or like that 50-something-year-old, well, I only need 20-year term. I'm going to buy the cheapest term for $3 million or whatever it was, because I'll never get sick. I'm in great health. And boom, his kids are ready to go to college, and boom, he's out of a job and he has no money coming in. So if you've bought policies from Voya, ING, Met, North American, or even some of the William Penn policies, and they were the cheapest thing at the time, and I understand that, you need to review that and say, is this what I really need for my future? It's not about the cheapest. It's about the value. It's about what is going to pay when I need it the most. And if you're buying off the internet and everything else, and you're a know-it-all and you're a do-it-yourselfer, well, guess what? I'm sorry, you need to speak to an expert, because an expert is going to tell you about, like myself and my company, we're going to tell you about the riders that are available, the riders that you could have for disability, the living benefit riders of long-term care, of disability, of critical illness. These are things that happen in life. Nobody's life is a straight arrow. The market's not a straight arrow. The only certainty in life is the market's going to go up, it's going to go down, we're going to live, we're going to die, we're going to run into situations along the way, whether it's a health situation or a money situation, or we lose a job. These things all happen in life, and you need to protect yourself against those downsides. So, as they say, you can sleep at night. So you can sit on that raft in the water and look up at the sky and not have to be concerned, because you have your bases covered. And that's what we do every day of the year, 24 hours a day. We're looking to cover your bases. We're looking at the cracks in your armor to protect you and to protect your family, so you can live a comfortable, successful life. And it's not about how much money you collect. It's about how much income you have. It's not about, I've got $1 million in my 401k or IRA and I'm set. You're not set, because you have to pay taxes on all that money, and you're going to live a lot longer than you think you're going to live, hopefully. Life expectancy now is, up there. And with medical science, life expectancy, if you're looking at 20-year, may go to 100, 110, 120, 150. We don't know where medical science is going to take us. we do know that we're living longer. That doesn't mean we're living better, but we're living longer. Fear of outliving your money is the biggest fear there absolutely could be. So if you have all your money at risk and you don't have it protected, or you don't have guaranteed income coming in, then you're vulnerable. And that's why you need to talk to us. You're listening to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. This is Neil Himmelstein. I can be reached at 631-647-4694. Hope you have a terrific July 4th this weekend. It's supposed to be beautiful on Sunday. I know we're hitting a little rain patch here. We're supposed to have great holiday, and I'm glad that the world is opening up. Please protect yourself. Have someone look at your contracts. Reach out to me for any ideas you want me to talk about on the program at 631-647-4694. Anything you want to talk about, or if you want to talk about your own things, happy to do that with you. Neil Himmelstein, Main Street Code for Financial Success, MainStreetPlanningGroup.com, 631-647-4694. Have a great day, everybody.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.